okay, so what we have here is our React app. Okay, so two things I want to highlight here. So what I really want to do today is state in React. You get a bonus thumbs up. I started doing the German numbering with my hands. I'm living in Vienna, so I started doing the German numbering, and my computer keeps thinking I'm giving everybody thumbs up all the time. But so basically what our app is at this point, and this is just really cursory overview so you have a general idea of what's going on here. We have what this is standard React syntax. Don't super worry about it, but we are basically saying put at the base of our application a this app component. And actually I'm realizing it also doesn't render in Firefox correctly, so I do need to switch to a new browser. Just one moment. If you have Firefox open, you will probably need to change away from Firefox into something else. So here I'm in Safari, for example. So, and as we can see, I'm going to get rid of this console.log. We don't need the console.log, but here we have our console, and here we have our web view. So if this were a real website, this is what you would see. Okay. So
Yep.
So we've added some syntax that said to React, okay, go ahead, and we've added some syntax to React that says go ahead and render this app component. Okay, I'll explain what a component is in just 1 minute, but just so you know what this file is, and then we're not going to look at it anymore. We have something written into our HTML that says render this script, this index.jsx script. So when this web page loads, this is an HTML web page, we have a tag to a JavaScript script in there, and that's index.jsx, and in index.jsx, the only thing that we have said is go ahead and render. We're going to be using we're going to be using React, and we're going to be rendering this app component. Okay, so that's the only thing that we've said, and this is pretty much the only place. Like you could, the first time you're coding with a React app, the first time you're building a React app from scratch, you can like copy paste this code and never have to worry about it again. So I'm not super concerned about understanding the basics of this or like understanding how this pieces together exactly. So now we're here on the app.jsx piece. Okay, so first question I have for you. What does this syntax look like?
More so like HTML.
Exactly. This looks just like HTML. And do you know what this is called? Because what I want to highlight here is we are in JavaScript. We're in an app.jsx file, and it looks like we've got HTML. So what do you know what that syntax is called? If you don't know, worries. I'll give you a hint. I'll give you a hint. It's the file extension. If you can see it.
Oh, I can't see it.
Okay, yeah, JSX. So
okay.
It's called JSX, and I believe it stands for JavaScript XML, if I'm remembering correctly. I might be misremembering that. But it basically you can write HTML appearing code, Medina, directly into your app, and it appears that you're doing HTML, but it's actually not quite. How this renders actually will be the exact HTML that you expect will render here. Like there's going to be no difference. The difference between this and real HTML are certain properties. So for example, class name. Do you remember what that's actually called in HTML?
Just a class.
Exactly. Very good. Yes, it is called just class. Exactly. And here we have class name. I don't see any other differences here. Excuse me. And so, but that's exactly right. So there are like little minor differences like that. One other difference, for example, if I wanted to change the style of this, in HTML I would use style, but I would use then a string. Here, let me say, let me just change it to white. Now I've changed this text to white. This format, I pass in an object with a key value property, like key value property pairs. But in pure HTML, if I were doing this right in the code, which would be kind of weird, but you could absolutely do, I would pass this in as just a string. Like I would pass this in as a string.
Okay, yeah.
So there's like little differences, but exactly right. This looks just like HTML, and this is JSX.
Can I ask another question?
Please.
Sorry. So the .jsx, how is that different from like a regular JavaScript file?
What the difference is? Excellent question. What the difference is that this syntax is supported. So if you have a .js file, and this was an error that used to bug me all the time, was that and the irony is that a .js file, like the .js file doesn't support JSX, but a .jsx file does support or just regular JavaScript. So I can write JavaScript functions in here, no problem. But if I remove this X, then this is gonna break. And it basically, I don't know quite why that design decision was made. I kind of get the delineation, but yeah. So that's the real difference. That you have the additional functionality in JSX of writing React components, or Vue works in the same way. I assume Angular, although I'm not an Angular expert. Actually, I believe Angular does it now that I say that. But that you can use this additional JSX syntax so it looks like you're writing HTML.
Okay, but JSX is specific to the React framework.
It is how almost everyone writes React, and JSX is, I believe, got popularized through React. So I associate React and JSX, like those are mixed in my mind. However, they are separable. Like I mentioned Vue, which is another very popular front-end framework, and I'll actually explain in just one second what a front-end framework is. But it's a very popular front-end framework, and and Vue also uses JSX, for example. So React is not alone in supporting JSX.
Okay.
But most React apps are going to be written in JSX, or with JSX rather.
Okay, understood.
Okay, sweet. Sorry. So front-end framework. I use that word. Do you know the difference between front-end and back-end?
Yes.
Okay, try and explain it for me real quick.
So front end is like the client side, what we, like the users, see. And then the back end is the server side, so it holds like all the files, HTML, CSS, JavaScript, that holds the information for what we see on the client side.
Okay, so that sounds really good. There's two things I want. There's one thing I want to, what is the word I'm looking for? Precisify. I don't know what the word is. I want to, precisify. And then there's one tweak I want to make. So the first thing is, so I consider it very important when we're thinking of front end and back end. I think of it as very important to consider that the front end and back end are actually different machines. Like they're literally different computers. So what I mean by that is that the front end is literally your machine. Like when you go to Instagram, or when you go to, I always use the example of Passion Class, and that's because I wrote all the code for Passion Class. So I know exactly how it comes together. But when you go to Passion Class, the front end, what this web page right here, this is literally, this is a program that is running on your actual machine. Like the server, once it's here, like, yes, I know it takes a second to load, like, oops, this is a weird thing about Safari, sometimes it does that. I might have to close this and open a new tab. I don't fully get Safari. But when you, like, right now it's loading, and what the server is doing with the back end, there's a computer this one's, I believe, based in Frankfurt, because I'm based in Europe. So there's a bunch of computers in warehouses in Frankfurt, and when my computer, my front end, that's a weird way to put it, but my client, when the client sends a request to Passion Class, then, like you very correctly said, Medina, there's a server, in this case in Frankfurt, that responds with hey, here's all the here's all the code. That code actually runs on my individual machine. So these like those modals, those two things that just flashed up, those are both part of the program that actually like that didn't come from the server. That just came from my machine. Okay.
Okay.
So that's the first thing I want to highlight. And the second thing I want to highlight is so the front end has HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. All of those obviously have to be sent from the backend. Like when you go to a website that's not already saved on your machine, like especially the first time you visit a website, but pretty much any time, it's not saved on your machine. So your machine has to connect, like your iPhone, your computer, it doesn't matter what, has to connect with a server has to connect to the server to get those files. But then the server actually will only return that kind of file, and my point there is servers actually run in whatever language they run. They might run in Python, they might run on JavaScript, but like they don't actually run any HTML or CSS. If that makes sense. So the HTML, CSS, that's run on your individual machine in a browser. Browsers like Safari, Chrome, Firefox, Opera, Microsoft Edge, blah, blah, blah. Those browsers are literally programs that process HTML and CSS, and they're supposed to do it according to like a very advanced convention so that in theory every website runs perfectly in all browsers. But as we saw, for example, when I go to this React Playground, it actually doesn't work, for example, in Firefox. So I had to switch to Safari. So there are obviously differences between browsers as well. But yeah. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay, awesome. Okay, so when you take a look at this, I know you have an advantage here, but what do you think? Tell me what you would expect this to return.
So there's a container that holds a header that reads "Hello React," and then another header below it that reads "Start editing to see some magic happen."
Yes, very good. I'm so glad you also recognized the container. Exactly right. Yeah, that like a divider, a box, whatever you want to call it, div. Yeah, there is this invisible box here as well. So it works just like we would expect in HTML. Okay, now I'm going to change this from React to Medina. Actually, I'm not going to do that yet. I'm going to say let name equals React. Okay, and then I'm going to say I'm going to have us render the name, so it still says hello React. Then I'm going to add a button here that says change name to Medina. And then, so what's going to happen if I click this button right now? You have a guess?
Nothing.
Yeah, very good. Nothing will happen because it's just a button. There's no functionality associated with it. Do you recall, I don't know, or I say recall, do you know the name of the function that we would need to give this button some functionality?
On click.
Very good. Very, very good. Brilliant. And I hope you are coding along with me right now. So we can have an on-click function. I'm going to just make it nothing for now. So we have this is just a blank function. This is just an anonymous function that does nothing. So now what I'm going to do is create something that actually changes our name to React. So we're going to change it from React to Medina. So I'm going to say change name is a function, and name, when this function gets called, is now Medina. Okay, so now I'm going to assign this change name function. Let me scoot this down a little bit. Sorry, I just want to make sure it's big enough. Yep. So I'm going to assign this change name function to onClick. So when I click this, what do you think is going to happen now?
It'll change to Hello Medina.
So I gave you a trick question intentionally because that's what I want you to think, because that's what you should think, and that is correct. That's correct thinking, but nothing quite happens. And we can also verify that the change name function has been successfully called. That's also important. If I were debugging this, that would be my first guess of like, why didn't name change to Medina? So let's just console.log the name to make sure it's working. So when we click change name is a function now that does two things. It changes the space in memory called name to Medina, and it logs that name. So now if we click this, it is logging Medina, so we know that this function, it is successfully tied to the change name, but it's not resulting in an HTML change here.
Okay.
So that's unintuitive. That's where React comes in, and that's where state comes in. So state is a special thing in React where you use to replace variables that have an impact on what the user sees. Like basically, let me rephrase that. When you have a website and you want to make it interactive, you want to make it so that when the user does something, it can change, then you need state. So let me give you some very specific examples here. So on Passion Class, again, I built this website, so I use it always as an example because I know exactly how it works. So one thing I have is I have a Boolean tied to this menu button, and that's state because when that value changes, I want the component, this menu component here, to do something. I want it to look different for the user. I want something to change in the user experience. So in other words, it re-renders the component in a different way. Okay?
Oh.
Sorry, yep. Does that make
Yes.
sense?
Yes.
Okay, same with this currency menu. So this currency menu, if I open this, it can be euro, it can be USD. I have here, I have an open and close button here. I have an open and close button here. So those are all stateful components. They all have state. And when the state changes from closed to open or open to closed, then the component re-renders and it has the possibility of rendering differently. Let me give you a different example. So if you come over to the thinking and change classes, so you start by seeing essentially all the classes that there are in this area. So you've got, African American history, you've got folk art, you've got beginning narrative filmmaking, blah, blah, blah. You're like, that is not what I'm looking for. I'm looking to learn React. So you type here, React, you type it into this input box, and the classes shrink to just the classes that have React in their description. So what happened here is the user did some action. Actually, it doesn't even matter if the user did some action. It does matter because usually state changes with the user doing action, but it doesn't have to. I could have a timer, for example, something like that. But here now I've changed the box, and now my results also change, and so my component looks different. It's changed. It changed from 80 classes or whatever this is, 40 classes, to just 2 classes. Okay, does that make sense so far? Like in the context of when we would need state?
Yes. Can I attempt to repeat it back to you to
Please,
make sure I understand?
that's a great idea.
Okay, so on an event, so in our case, it was on the click, you're telling the state of something in the code to change.
Very good. Very well said, Medina. Truly, I mean that very honestly. That is very well said. So what I would say is there is as you correctly identified, there is an event. We have a function. We have a function that is tied to an event listener, and when that event gets fired, then this function gets called. So that's 100%. So that very, very astute. So we have an event in this case. In this case, for example, we have a click event. When that click event occurs, this function gets called. When we have here, we have an update input change event. When I don't know exactly what it's called right now, but it's the event that gets fired when the text in this input box changes. That event gets fired, and we have a function that's tied that updates state. Now, what is the difference? You said this perfectly. I'm not taking it away from you at all. You said this perfectly. I'm kind of repeating and adding color to what you said. The difference between this function and why nothing changes over here versus these functions, why something does change, is that we use React's state, which I will show you in a minute. I know you haven't seen that yet, but we use React state in this context, and that makes components changeable. That's what that does. So tell me one more time. You said it very, very well. So repeat it even a second time. That was great. First time was perfect, but
yeah. So the way I'm understanding it is upon an event, so like on click, you're telling the file to make some sort of change. I don't understand quite yet what the state is, but the state is going to make a change.
Exactly. No, so the only thing that you really need to know about state is that when it changes, it's a special kind of variable that when it changes, we tell the component to re-render. Okay, so let me show you this example. So here, we did not specify this as state. So name here is not, it started as name is React, and we wanted to change to Medina, and even indeed, it does change to Medina when we click the button, but it doesn't change in the rendered component. Why? Because the component does not re-render. So the component only re-renders if and when state changes.
So is it like you're like in the DOM? You're just changing it in the DOM?
So what React does, very, very close. So what React does is React will communicate with the DOM at the moment of state changing and say the DOM needs to get updated. Without calling state, there is no communication to the DOM. Or without changing state is what I really want to say. Without changing state, there's no communication with the DOM. So that's why in this case we change name, and name is Medina. It's been Medina like this whole time. But the very first render, it wasn't Medina. We'll refresh this. The very first render, it wasn't Medina. And we can change the name to Medina, and it is successfully changed. So we're console.logging name, and it's logging Medina. But it's not, like you said, it is not re-rendering the component, so there's no communication to the DOM. This component needs to change. Okay, sounds good. So let's go ahead and take a look at what state actually, let's look at how we can fix this. So, change name. What we would do instead, I'm just going to write the exact same thing. So this looks like a let name as React. What we'll do here for a stateful component to make a piece of state, we'll change name to. This is just going to be a standard syntax you see all the time. So hold on just one second. Set name set name is React.useState React. Actually, let's start with Joe initially. And cannot reassign name because it is a constant, of course. And then the other thing we're going to do here is say set name to Medina. Okay. So now, would you want to take a stab at what you think this? You don't have to explain the whole. Well, actually, let me take a step back. Do you have any idea what this syntax is here, where we've got the name and set name in brackets on the left side?
I'm not too sure.
Okay, no worries, no worries. So that is deconstructing. So don't worry about that. Actually, let's just ignore that for now. But what I want to make clear about what this syntax does, what deconstructing does is it allows you to, out of this single call, to get two variables, and that's because what this call does is it returns an x and a function. It actually returns a string and a function, and so the string gets name becomes the string, and set name becomes the function. So so this syntax, what it's doing is, because what this returns is an array, and the first thing in the array is a string, and the second thing in the array is a function. Then when we deconstruct this, name corresponds to the string and set name corresponds to the function. Does that make sense?
Okay, yes.
And then I can just use name. Oh no. That's weird. Let me refresh this page, or let me just close out of these because it seems to be working. I know my internet connection is working because I'm talking to you and I hear you. So name is, for example, here, it's just like a variable, just like let name was a variable before. Now we just have a const name, which is I can use here.
Mm-hmm.
So the other difference is what React does. So the thing that's special about this, because I could have said const name equals Joe. Instead of saying const name set name equals React, you say Joe, blah, blah. I could have said const name equals Joe, and name would work in the exact same way.
Okay.
Now, the difference here is we have this React setter function. So when this setter function is called, two things happen. The first thing that happens is that name gets updated. So name will change from the initial value that we set it to and become the new value that we're setting it to.
Okay.
So that's the first thing. So what it does is name will become the new value that we set it to. So it's just like saying let name equals Joe, now name equals Medina. Boom, exact same thing. The second thing that it does is that, look, you're getting balloons. I don't know why. Yeah, I don't know where those come from. Sometimes I can't control them apparently. The second thing that it does is it will it updates the variable, and the second thing it does is it re-renders the component. It re-renders the component top to bottom, but instead of name starting initially as Joe, it is Medina on the next rendering. It is the Medina on the next and all subsequent renderings.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yes. Until you call another name.
Until we call name, exactly. Set name again, exactly. So let's click this button. What do you think is going to happen?
Medina. Hello, Medina.
I think so too. Yep. So now one thing here is that's weird is Joe. Console log name is Joe. Do you have a guess? This is pretty advanced. Do you have a guess why that just happened?
Was that the? Oh, I don't know.
No.
So when
I don't expect you to. Sorry, I'm listening.
Yeah, I'm not sure. Like when you called the console log, was Joe still like in as name?
Exactly. Very good. Okay, that is actually the answer. That's 100% the answer, and that's the right thinking. It obviously still Joe has to still be it. That's a brilliant engineering thinking, Medina, because it obviously has to be still be that, because otherwise where would Joe come from? Like Joe, it obviously hasn't been updated yet. Do you have a guess as to why it hasn't been updated yet? Because on line 6 we set name to Medina, and then on line 7 we console.log name and are getting Joe. Do you have an idea of why that would be?
Is it because you call name below, like the hello name is below that?
So in truth, no, but it's that kind of thinking. It's that kind of thinking. So let's stick with that. So what this actually is, to be really clear, and if you don't know what this is, don't worry about it. This change name, or excuse me, not change name, set name, is an asynchronous function, and what that means is that it's gonna actually get executed after the current execution context ends. So after the current execution context ends, there's actually some rules in the back of the browser that get sometimes complicated, so I don't always 100% know the exact order of operations that are going to occur. You can figure it out if it's really necessary, but that rarely is. But the point is, after this execution context ends, is when it's gonna get changed. And more specifically, actually, the really right way to think about it is, when I say this execution context, what I'm saying here is we call this new execution context when the function change name is executed on the button on click. This execution context gets opened. We have a new execution context running a new function. If you don't know exactly what I'm saying, don't worry about it. But basically, execution context, you can pretty much always know where they start and end because of squiggly brackets. So this is an execution context. This is an execution. Like, this is the start of it. This is the end of it. And so so name, because this is an asynchronous function, it will first happen after the end of the execution context. Don't worry about that, and it actually could happen after multiple in theory. But that's too much information. I'm sorry for I've even said it. The real time that name changes, actually, is on the re-rendering of the component. So the component renders top to bottom. On line 4, when this function gets called after our component has re-rendered, we click the button and the component re-renders. What is name now?
After you click the button?
After we click the button.
It should be Medina.
Exactly right. And that is the point. That is the first moment in which that name is actually different. So my point here is, we set name, then we console.log, then we re-render the component. That's why that happens. So we set name. It's asynchronous. It actually doesn't. It tells it update the name in the future. It's asynchronous, so it actually doesn't change the value of name right away. So name is still the same. And so we go to the next line of code, console.log, and then boom, the component re-renders. And first, when the component re-renders, it starts top to bottom again. Name is Medina now.
Okay.
So does that broadly make sense? Let me pause here for questions.
Yeah, I think that makes sense to me.
Okay, awesome. Good. You're doing great. You are really doing great, Medina.
Thank you.
Okay, so now I'm gonna click change name to Medina a second time. Okay, tell me what is gonna happen. Start at the top of the function and just walk me through lines 4 through all the way through really 17, or really 4 through 9 is what we really care about. Actually, 4 through 17. And tell me what each line of code is going to do. So what happens? We've clicked the button once. Remember, so name was Joe, and then we have a console log Joe, and it says hello Medina. So now we're at the same. We clicked the button once. Okay, so tell me what line 4 does.
Okay, so the name is still Medina, or right now it's Medina.
Yeah. So it's not even. Let's say on line. Yeah. Let's say on line 4. We're opening a new execution context because we're re-rendering the component. We have a new squiggly bracket. So we're saving in memory a new, in this executions context memory, a new variable called name, and it has the value of
Medina.
Very good. And then what else are we doing?
Calling a set name.
We're saving in memory a variable called set name, which is this, and that function doesn't change, or shouldn't say doesn't change. I mean, it actually, I don't know if it changes or not, but in what I mean by that is It's always the setter function. It's the React provided setter function.
Okay.
Okay. Very good. Okay, continue. So then what happens on lines 5 through 8?
We have the same function that we wrote before, which is the change name function.
So let's actually talk a little more specific. So just like we saved a variable in memory here and saved a second variable in memory here, what are we doing here? No worries. We are saving a variable in memory called change name.
Okay.
And that points to a function, and that function's body is this. So we set a function. We save in function. We write a new variable in memory called change name, whose function body is this. But we actually don't even have to worry about what that function's body is. The first time we ever worry about that is if it's ever even called.
Okay.
Sounds good. Okay, and then what happens here?
You're updating the web view, right? It's returning what we see on the web.
Right, exactly right. It's connecting to the DOM. It's telling the DOM, render this component, render this HTML. And that's exactly right. And what is the name value that we expect to be rendered in here?
Medina.
Very good.
That's still saved as a variable name.
Okay, very good. 100%. Very, very good, Medina. Very, very good, truly. Next thing, let's say I click this button. I'm not going to click it just yet. What is going to happen? So we come in here. Tell me what's going to happen.
I think it should still say hello Medina, but the console log should say Medina as well.
Oh my goodness, you are so good. Very, very good. 100%. I was thinking I was going to trick you, and I did not at all. Very, very good. Very, very good. Only that very first time will we get that console log name as Joe, because it hasn't been updated yet. Okay, good. You are killing it. Okay, now what I want to do, let me think for a second. What we're going to do now is create a second component. So I'm going to get rid of this. We don't need this console.log. That's fine. We don't need the console.log. What we're going to do, we don't need to start editing to make some magic happen either. What we really want is just to have change name to Medina. Now it says, now we're Medina. So that's good. What we want now is to have a second component. So I'm going to make it, you could do this in the same file, but just so you know, if you're using this playcode.io, it does yell at you if you write like hardly any code at all in a single file. And you don't want it to like freeze and be like, sorry, now you have to go to the paid version. So we're going to call this one greetings. Here, that'll work. .tsx. Oh, not tsx, JSX, sorry. Okay. So I'm going to open greetings.tsx. All React components have this just standard import React from React in there that just lets it know we're going to be using React. And what I'm going to do is say export function greeting. And what this is it's going to be a React component that shows exactly what we just had here. Oops, sorry about that. This is what I'm trying to switch to. That shows exactly what we just had here. Which is, it's going to be Medina. The only other thing I'm going to do really quick is add name up here. These are called props. So we're doing great. I wasn't even planning to do props, but you got to say it so quickly. So the props are things that we pass into the component. So when I render this greetings component, I can pass in any name I want, and it will render that name.
Okay.
Here. So let's come back over here. Let's actually put this into practice in our app file. So let's put this back exactly how we had it before, where we say we have a greetings component. This is how you render it. It looks like HTML almost, but it's not quite HTML. And we're going to say greetings, and we're going to say name is, it's initially Joe. So now this should work. What does it not like about this? Oh, I know why. Sorry, oops, didn't mean to do that. Import greetings from greetings. Now it'll be happy. Imported module is not in source. Export. Do I need to squiggly brackets this? Okay, I need to squiggly brackets that. Okay, so you there? Or you still need a second?
I'm there.
Okay, awesome, great. So, what did we just do? Do you want to try and explain to me what just happened on lines 2 and 11, and then we can come back and look at the greetings in a second?
Yeah, so on on line 2, you imported, or you kind of like connected the greetings file to the app file, so you can call the function that we're gonna write in the greetings file. And then on line 11, it looks like you are actually calling the greetings function. Yeah.
Very good. Exactly right. And we are calling the greetings function. That's a very good way of saying that, actually. And I actually want to highlight that point because all React components are functions. And what they do is they return components. Okay, so the return value of the function is actually a component. So yeah, that's the point there, that the return value of the function is a component.
Okay.
And so the greetings function, you said it very well. I would just always call this a component, but you're 100% right. It's a function, and that's important to have in mind. Like you call it in the exact same way. It works the exact same way because it is that. It's a function, and the return value of the function is going to be a React component, or basically TSX with whatever event listeners and state that you tie to it. And the reason the state is important is because that way you might you can re-render the component, for example. Okay, so if I click this change name to Medina button, what is gonna happen right now?
The name will become Joe.
So the name already is Joe.
Okay. So let's see. Whatever the greetings.
So let's start here. So tell me. Yeah, exactly. Wait, sorry, you were saying that right. 100% right. Tell me again.
Yeah. So whatever the greetings function is trying to call, which looks like if you open the greetings file, it's calling the name. And then back on the apps.js, we can see what name is.
Okay, so it's so good. Honestly, you are so good, Medina. You're a natural. However, there's something I want to correct here, but I am so impressed with the thinking. I want you to know that. I mean that honestly. Like, just because it's not perfect, you recognize really important things. So, greetings needs name. And let me actually change it. I'm glad you pointed that out. I'm going to change this from name to name prop. The reason I say that is just because these are props. They don't have to be the same as they can, but don't have to be, and probably shouldn't be at the beginning, the same as the original file. So let me change this from name prop here, and now it's saying we're going to get an error. Why don't we have an error? It should be name prop here. So let's refresh this, and now greetings name prop Joe, and so greetings renders hello whatever name prop is. Hello name prop period. Hello Joe period. And name prop. Okay. So take another step. Look at line 11 and tell me what you think is happening now.
Okay, so it's running the greetings function with the variable name prop, which is currently Joe.
Exactly right. We are passing the prop. They're called props. It's property. React tried to be cool. It's Facebook. It's in California, so they like try to be like properties. We'll call them props for short and slick. So they have name prop. We pass the prop name prop. Excuse me. We pass the prop. We pass the prop. Yeah, I said that right. We pass the prop name prop, which we've set to Joe, to the greetings component or the greetings function, as you very correctly called it. And so then the one thing is another option, I tend to auto deconstruct these. We're just going to leave it like this. So notice the squiggly brackets here. It's actually doing the exact same thing as this, called deconstruction. And you don't super have to worry about that for now. But basically what this is it's allowing us to use name prop directly in this function here.
Okay.
So very good. So now what is going to happen if I click this button?
Nothing.
Very good. Very good. And how can I fix that?
We can change like the name prop to Medina.
100%. We could manually change the name prop to Medina. That'll work. Or if we want it so that the button works.
A state. Okay. A use state.
Right. We already have that here. So on the initial rendering, it's Joe. We want it to be on the initial rendering Joe. And when I click this button, it changes the name. So I'll just give you a big hint, aka mostly the answer. If we pass in name instead of hard coding it, we can pass in this name variable that we create. We created Joe in this function, in this app function, and we said name is originally Joe, and then we can set it later if we want. So we pass name, but it's Joe. Just right now it's Joe. So name is Joe. The very first time we refresh the page, it's Joe. We then pass that to greetings as name prop, and so greetings will render. Oops, I'm sorry. Greetings will render an H1 that says hello, and then whatever name prop is, which is initially Joe. And then when we click this button, so if we click this button, what's going to happen now, Medina?
It should say hello, Medina for the second. Is this the second click?
Yeah, exactly. So that's even step 2. So what's going to happen even on line 5? Like when we, or actually, let me just say that the very first time when I click this, what line of code is going to get executed?
Okay. Yep. On the button, unclick change name.
So then, what line of code will get executed?
7.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean 6 through 8. Exactly right. Yeah. So 7's the only line between the squiggly brackets, right? So this change name function is going to get called, and we're going to get set name, and we're going to set the name to Medina. So what are the 2 things our setter function does, Medina? Do you remember? If you do the full class with me, then I will ask you again and again and again and again. So the first thing that it does is what we would expect. What is the setter? What does set name do?
Sets the name.
It updates the value of name. The very first thing it does is let's see, I keep doing the German things that things I'm thumbing up. The first thing it does is it updates the value of name to Medina, and the second thing it does, you remember the second thing?
The set name function. Wait.
So when we call the set, I'm talking about when we call the set name function, the first thing it does is update the name, and the second thing it does is re-render the component. And
Okay.
that's the magic thing about state in React is that when state changes, when we call a state setter function, yes, it changes the value of the variable, and it also causes the component to re-render. And so, yeah, I guess the number 2 causes balloons to go. So if I do one like this or one like this, I'm gonna get some kind of animation. That's okay. So that's the second thing it will do. So it will update Medina, and now if we click here, we get hello Medina. Why? Because the component re-renders top to bottom. Name is now Medina, and then in our greetings, we're passing the name as a prop, and now that's here. Now, why is this tricky? Why is this cool? Obviously, this greetings thing, this greetings component is only one line of code, but we could make it longer. We could add a second line, which I'll actually do right now, just to make it worthwhile and make it an H2 that says hello you. I mean, it's all we got to do here. But now you can see it's rendered one that says hello Joe, hello you. Okay, it's not so pretty. I will prettify this because that was ugly. So that's what we've got right here. Okay, we've got a component that returns just it just returns hello you. Okay, but it is 2 lines of code, and it could be arbitrarily long. It could be 50 lines. It could be huge. The next thing I can do, so now if I have this greeting name, I can just copy and paste this. Boom, this component renders twice. Hello Joe, hello you. Hello Joe, hello you. I change name to Medina. One button click changes both.
Okay.
And that's because greetings is here. Or I could also separate them. I could have this one be consistently Medina, and this one starts as hello, and what I've done here is on the second call to the greetings function, I fix the name to Medina. The first one I've set it to name, and then here when I change name to Medina, it only affects the first one because we're just rendering name here. But that's kind of the value of these reusable components in React, that I can render a third one that says, hello guest, and I can have 3 components that look identical in like 2 clicks, but with different data that also render different data. This one says Joe, this one says Medina, this one says guest, and this button only changes this first one.
Okay.
So that's the thought process in React, is it gives you components that look and feel very similar. So like, for example, coming over to Passion class, like you can see these components tend to be, a lot of websites have very similar components that are repeated. Like all these cards, for example, we have a big photo at the top, big photo at the top, big photo at the top. Then we have a title. Then we have a teacher photo and a teacher name, a teacher photo and a teacher name. And you can see, and I missed the description, blah, blah, blah. So all of these are components where instead of passing in, the first one is Joe, the second one is Medina, and the third one's guest. The first one is AP Computer Science. The second one is acrylic painting, and the third one is Mini Bootcamp React Web Development. And that's what this is. It's about looping you through, or they're all one function call, and we're just passing in different props.
Okay.
Cool. Okay, so that's what I wanted to cover today. So we did that. That's what I wanted to cover. I hope that made sense. Do you have any questions? Let me pause here. Do you have any questions?
No, but I can see how like using React and like this type of framework can make creating a web page, or at least the front end of it, like go so much faster and smoother, and like you have to type a lot less.
Absolutely right. Because this is, I can do two. I can have components that are very similar to each other. I just pass in slightly different data via these props, and state that I can do all sorts of calculations all the time as much as I want, but my web page only re-renders, only updates whenever I have this value actually change, like when I actually call this setter function. So, for example, if I was doing some kind of complex calculation, for example, or what's like a better example? Like what is a better example? But like I don't want my React code to constantly be like, did anything change? Did anything change? Did anything change? Like the answer is no. Like don't take any resources from the user, and only update it when we specifically say update it, if that makes sense.
Yes.
So those are the two things I wanted to. Okay. Any other questions?
No, I think I understand it. I think, and yeah, it makes sense.
Okay, awesome. No, I appreciate it. You are terrific. It can get a lot more complicated. You can have multiple pieces of state, and you can have, nested components, blah blah blah. Like those things can get more complicated. But this is the fundamentals of React. So I am. By the way, if you have my you have my email already. So if you want to follow up on anything, you can feel free. But if you please, I know you personally are already in like a boot camp, but if you had a good time, like I do have a rotating set of 3 sample classes that you can check out, and also I will also share here as well. This is my mini React boot camp, so I'm going to share it. Oh, there's a sample class tonight, which is we're doing right now. I did post that is the one place I did it yesterday. So 1 second. So the although I do see a little problem here. That's interesting, and that's only on Safari. But if you are interested, you can take a look there. And it's very light. You can see it's actually planned to be it's like truly very mini. Like 2.5 hours a week, plus of course a couple hours of doing some solo practice. But it's like small groups, and we kind of talk in this context, and then you get 3 hours. It's a lot different than like, a full-time thing. This is about mastering the particular skill of React in, the goal is something like 6 hours a week over 8 weeks, and then you have or I shouldn't say mastering, but having a very solid foundation in that skill. So that's what it's about.
Okay, awesome.
Cool.